I know.
All right, we'll get started. We'll need a motion for approval of the agenda, first off.
Still moved.
We have a motion by Mark.
I'll second.
Second by Lori. Further discussion? So since we're not, well, I guess, I think I can see everybody here if I expand this maybe. All right, we'll do, because we don't really do a roll call, so we'll do a show of hands, all in favor, right hand. So we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 0. All right, we'll move on to discussion action items. Approve the 2020 audit. You want to talk about it a little bit, Dina?
I will.
Okay.
There's just a few things on there that I want to make sure that I point out. The first one is on page 4 if you're looking at a paper copy. So the one labeled 4. You will notice there that we have a debt service for the end of 2020. I am getting some feedback. I feel like I'm talking to myself. Hold on. Okay. We have a debt service at the end, amount at the end of 2020, about $1,592,709. And then our unrestricted fund balances for the end of 2020 were around $2,485,474, which leaves us in a total net position of $4,078,183. So our unrestricted fund balances there, that puts us at a little over the 39% range. So even after, a rough year financially as far as COVID and budget, we still ended up with really good fund balances at the end of 2020. The other thing I wanted to point out, one of the things, is when we refinanced our bond issues last year, it ended up, let me make sure I get to that page. Find that page. And I will answer any questions that anybody has. These are just a few things that I wanted to point out. I have to get to the right page here. So when we refinanced our bond issue last year, what I'm looking at here is the amount that saved us. So it actually helped us reduce our total debt service requirements by $720,217, which then resulted in an economic gain for us of $601,862. So it's nice to see that, even though that was what we thought it would be, it's nice to see that actual savings there for us in terms of debt service by refinancing those bonds. Overall, they were very happy with our audit. They felt like one of the things that they always compliment us on is our internal controls, meaning we have a lot of systems in place to make sure that it would be extremely difficult at this point to commit fraud or embezzlement or anything like that. When we make a deposit, for example, that goes through 3 different people at least, sometimes 4. So there's almost no way for that deposit to end up being wrong, because Elaine receipts the deposit, Connie takes the deposit to the bank and gets a receipt from the bank, and Tricia posts the deposit. And all 3 of those have to match. So that's one of the things that they always compliment us on, our internal controls. Another thing that they had talked to me about was how we are pretty good about making sure that we have cross-training, so that if somebody in the office ended up having to be out for an extended period of time, there's somebody else in the office who knows how to do that job. And so they always like it when you have more than one person in an office who knows how to do everything, because then that keeps your financial expenditures, revenues, payroll, all of that going without a break in services. So they're always very complimentary to us on that. as far as our internal controls go. So that's always nice. And like I said, overall, they were very happy with our audit. We did have 2 findings this year, and I'll go to those as well, because I want to point those out and talk about those for a minute. As you guys know, when we transitioned to the new software company, it was by far not a smooth transition, and we had talked about that a couple of times this year. So one of the findings that we had was our auditors actually had to help us come in and get things reconciled with the bank. When we switched software, so at the end of June 2019, when we were with the old software system, we balanced perfectly. Starting in July of 2019, which was the month that we transitioned to the new software system, all of a sudden we didn't balance. Well, there was no reason within that day, actually, that we should not have been able to balance and reconcile. But we didn't. And because we didn't balance in July, we couldn't balance the whole year. So we have been working on this with SUI since November of 2019. So a year and a half almost. And I shared this with you guys previously too. But it finally got to a point where we had to just ask the auditors to step in and help us because we weren't getting anywhere with SUI. And I'll give you an example of one thing that happened more than once. When we first started with this system, we had some revenues and some expenditures that were double posting. So we called them and said, hey, these are double posting. Can you help us delete these so that we don't have them in there twice? And they said, well, we can't delete them. You're going to have to do an adjusting entry and put them back where they're supposed to go. So they walked us through how to do that. And so we did that. Well, then a few months later, when we were trying to resolve other issues, they said, well, let's clean up these accounts and let's delete these double postings. Well, we had already done an adjusting entry on those double postings. So when they then went in and deleted the double postings, which as it turns out they can do, but they have a special code that they have to put in to do it, we can't do it on our own. So when they went in and deleted those double postings, we had already done an adjusting entry on those postings. So all of a sudden, instead of having it in there twice, we didn't have it in there at all. And so that happened more than once. So there were a number of things like that. So finally, we had to have the auditors step in and help us. So what you're seeing here is a finding that we did not have our bank reconciliations reconciled. And that's because they had to step in and help us work through all of the software things that we had going on. They were also in contact with SUI. There were lots of 3- and 4-way conversations going on. But at the end of the audit, we're completely reconciled going into this year. So our cash reconciliation is in good shape. But this finding was because they had to step in and help us. Any questions about that? Okay. The next finding has to do with our bond refinancing. So apparently, when we refinanced the bond, even though we didn't actually pay out any money, we didn't send any money anywhere, nothing like that, I should have budgeted the $7,298,490 as an expense in the budget that the board approved. Well, I could have amended the budget 100 times and still would have never done that because I didn't know that I had to do that because to me it wasn't an actual expense. But I should have budgeted it as an actual expense. And so that's what this finding has to do with. And that is that we did not budget for the amount of expenditures that we expended. And so that's what that finding was. Again, that shouldn't happen again because we're not refinancing the bonds again. Plus, I now know that I would have to do that. But that's what that finding is. So those were the only 2 findings in the audit. Otherwise, like I said, they felt like we had done a good job. They felt like Everything was as it should be. We had good internal controls. We were very cooperative, all of those good things. I said one of the things, and I can't remember what page number it's on right now, but if you look through there, we spent like $446,000 in transportation, and we got transportation money about $64,000. So that kind of brings home how shortly funded the transportation amount is. But otherwise, everything looked good. And like I said, we are balanced now. So for this year, we should be in good shape. But I will answer any questions anybody has or go over anything anybody wants me to go over.
Is having two findings typical, atypical? I'm not used to findings, so I'm curious if that is good or bad.
All that means is that we have to tell them basically we're aware of that and that we're not going to do it again. And like I said, both of those were kind of unique situations due to switching over to a new software company and then refinancing the bond issues. So there's nothing that we have to do with that. We just had to acknowledge those findings and basically tell them we're going to do everything in our power to make sure that doesn't happen again.
Second question, does the auditor not ever present to us? I would have thought the auditor would have presented the audit, but is that not in our contract?
It is not in our contract. When I started last year, the superintendent before me said, they've never had them, they don't have them come, they've never had them come. Not something the board has wanted in the past. If that is something that the board wants in the future, we can definitely arrange for that. But it's not in our contract. It would be an extra charge.
I would be definitely in favor of that in the future, even if it's virtually.
Not to interrupt, but the reason that it was taken out of there is the auditor charges thousands of dollars or more to make a presentation.
Yeah, I was going to say several years ago, they used to come and do a presentation and bring the audit in bound books and all that stuff. And I don't remember what the charge was. I know it was.
It can't be very much. I mean, it's
it was like $15,000 or $15,000 or something like that. When
then we need to look for a different auditor if that's the case. When the time comes to renew, I mean, when you negotiate that, I would definitely look at negotiating that into the contract. I do have some questions on page 9, and this is previous to my time here. I assume that, you've got some huge budget variations between your budget and budget finals. Could you, final budgets, could you walk me through those? And then also on the budget final to actual, there's a couple of big instructional support has a big variation there, and executive administration has a pretty big variation there, and budget final to actual. If you could talk me through page 9.
Okay, so it's the one that's actually labeled page 9 at the bottom, Sean?
It's on the document, the PDF we received, it was page 9. Actually, I think it was in the audit, page 9. There you go.
Okay, so now what was your question?
If you could walk me through the variance between budget final, and then the actual for student activities, instructional support, executive administration, and community services. Anywhere there's a variation.
So as far as the original budget is concerned, I can't really answer that because that was not a budget that I created. That was a budget that was created before I started, that the board would have adopted in June before I started. So it's difficult for me to talk about why the previous superintendent came up with the numbers that she came up with. But as far as the final and the actual, that would have been what we had budgeted for the final expenditures and then what the actual expenditures ended up being. So in particular, you mentioned, what was it, instructional?
Instructional support was one of them that had a fairly significant variation between Yeah, that's not that big that's not a big budget variation there. The big one is executive administration that's got the big variation. Community support's got a pretty healthy variation too.
Executive administration.
Goes from difference about 37,000 over.
I don't honestly have an answer for that right now without going back into executive administration itself and looking to see what actually was spent out of that. I can definitely do that and report that back to you next Tuesday. But off the top of my head, without having those accounts in front of me that I can look at and say, okay, here's all the stuff that came out of that, it's difficult for me to speak to why that was $37,000 different.
Okay. The rest of them are pretty much favorable variations. Regular instruction had a negative variation as well, but the executive administration is the one that jumped out at me.
Well, I can definitely look at that and get back to you. But again, I just need to look in the software and print out those accounts and see, because I can't remember everything that came out of that account. So I would have to look at those, and I can definitely let you know.
And then overall, it looked like we had and I didn't go through it to try to figure it out. Maybe you'll know off the top of your head, about a $230,000 decrease in, I guess you call it a net position on that particular page. Is there one particular thing that contributed to that?
As far as the fund balances at the bottom?
The fund balance, yes, correct.
Yes, there's a couple of things that led to that. The main one being that we transferred over to Fund 4. It was almost $170,000, $169 something. And we did that on purpose. We approved that last year to transfer that over to Fund 4 in order to fund some capital projects and to start building our Fund 4 balances so that we could do some projects in the future. We also then budgeted about $40,000 more in that account than what we normally did. So that's about $210,000. And then we deficit spent 25-ish thousand. So that's where that variation comes from. Most of that went to Fund 4.
Okay.
Any other questions?
At what point did we figure out that the former superintendent's budget was so far off?
We did an amendment, I believe, I want to say November, if I remember right. So I would have started in July and amended that budget in November.
Okay.
If there's no other questions, I'll entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve the audit.
We have a motion by Dennis.
Second.
Second by Mark. Hard for me to see all the cameras here. See if I can see them all here. I think I got everybody. All in favor, right hand. So we got 7-0. All right, next thing we got is announcements. Next regular meeting will be February 23rd, 2020,
2021.
2021. What'd I say, 2020?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry. It's only February. I'll get caught up. I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
A motion by Mark.
I do have a question before we finish.
Okay.
I'm getting some text messages. Is this available on Facebook, or how's this being played
It's on YouTube.
on YouTube? Okay.
Yes. On our YouTube channel, the same that it's always on.
Okay.
We did have a couple visitors that were on earlier, but then they left when they saw that we weren't doing much. I'll second that motion to adjourn.
Second by Dennis. Further discussion. All in favor, right hand. 7-0. Meeting adjourned. 6:51.
See you Tuesday.
See you Tuesday.
All right, see you guys.
Yeah, thanks.